Hey everybody, this is Roy Bielitz from Apotheca Marketing, and you're listening to Real Marketing, the podcast about actual marketing tips and tactics and tricks without all the fluff. Today, we are happy to have Mike Rahel join us. Mike is the owner of Refined Element, a Kentico experience consulting firm based out of Oakland, Florida. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So a lot of people aren't going to know what Kentico is, but we're going to jump into that. But first, how do you get involved in being a Kentico expert? Like, what led you to a content management system like Kentico?
It was pure luck, I think. So I kind of already had a background in web development just from a previous role that I held. And so I actually had a recruiter reach out to me about a role, and I was living back in Ohio at that point in time, and there was a company that was looking to bring someone on that was, they were looking to kind of mentor someone who was new.
Sure.
So it really kind of just sprung out of that. Kentico just happened to be the system that they used. So it was just by chance that I started using Kentico.
Sure. Give us a little bit of, kind of background about Kentico. We have made it very clear in some of our past podcasts and videos and stuff that we're not a huge proponent of WordPress, and we're always looking for other content management systems and platforms to use with our clients. Give us a little background about Kentico and, why somebody might be interested in it and what types of clients you're usually working with.
Sure. So Kentico pretty much prides themselves in being enterprise level. I mean, they look for bigger clients. Usually the projects are like $1 million projects or above, essentially. But they are originally from Eastern Europe and have kind of slowly made their way over here to the US and have become pretty popular over here in the United States. They're .NET based. So instead of WordPress, which is like open source, they are Microsoft based, .NET. And so there is obviously a little bit more of a cost associated with using Microsoft platform.
Right.
You get into using Azure and some of the other tools that they have available. But along with that comes a lot more support and kind of a nicer ecosystem just in general. Whereas with WordPress, you see a lot of kind of piecemeal, people creating plugins and all of that. With Kentico, the software is created by Kentico. And you can integrate with third-party systems, but for the most part, they have all of the features and functionality built into the system that you would need right out of the box. You don't really necessarily have to look at third-party plugins for most of the functionality that you would want to do.
Right. And that's one of the big complaints that we've had with WordPress and even some other content management systems out there like Joomla and stuff like that historically, is that it is open source. It's cheaper, but you do have to pretty much buy a plugin to do anything. In WordPress, you have to have a plugin to copy and paste a page, for instance.
Right.
And just those aren't necessarily developed by reliable developers or companies. They're not necessarily updated, and they're a huge source of opportunities to be hacked.
It's a logistical nightmare sometimes when it comes to having multiple plugins and you're dealing with different developers, and some of them have been updated recently. Some of them it's been weeks, months, years since they have had any kind of updates done to them. So it's nice in this regard with Kentico because they do software refreshes actually fairly frequently, and so you'll get hot fix versions of the software that they release that fixes all kinds of bugs and stuff. Usually on a monthly basis, if not more frequently, just based on what's needed. It just adds to the overall support of the system. It makes it a lot easier to maintain it in the long run.
Sure. And there is even a commerce component to Kentico, right? If you wanted to do commerce, you can do that through that system.
Yeah, they have a whole e-commerce package that's part of it. It's not, it's included in the software. And so it can be used to build out an entire store functionality. They also have, at one point in time, they had partnered with a third-party e-commerce to offer kind of a more robust option for true enterprise level shopping. I don't know if that's even still an offering that they have anymore. But the e-commerce functionality is still there. And so it's definitely still something you can use.
Yeah. And that's a competitive space. I mean, you're playing with pretty big players when you get into the e-commerce thing. So you were talking about, it's an enterprise platform. What does that mean? So for people that aren't necessarily familiar with that, so, from a process management and people content management stuff, what kind of functionality should they expect from something like this if they're only used to like a WordPress or something?
Well, so I think a big part of it is just the fact that with using all of the Microsoft technology, with hosting it in Azure, with all of that, you have the opportunity to, it doesn't have to be a small site. It can handle very large loads of customers, functionality wise. It's able to handle whatever you throw at it pretty much. And it's also super flexible. So, I mentioned that it has a lot of function out of box that just comes with it. But then on top of that, if you get a developer to look at it, you can really do whatever you need to do and build out whatever you need to build as far as adding additional functionality to it.
Right. So give me a sense of, you said these are typically pretty large projects to implement. Give me a sense of the timing and what's involved and what a company could expect if they say they engage you for an implementation. What does that project look like?
Yeah. So to be completely honest, usually I end up jumping into projects where a client has already stumbled upon Kentico. They've already decided that that they want to use Kentico, and they're looking for someone who's an expert. And so a lot of times, they bring me on board just to kind of be an advisor. Most of the implementations, because of how large scale that they can be, there's a good possibility that they're looking at hiring an agency that is able to go through and actually do the implementation. And so a lot of times I end up just working directly with the client on an advisory basis, just kind of making sure that what they are getting built by the agency is what they actually are able to use, and that they know how to use it. And, if there's additional thought that needs to go into how they're architecting something, I can help them with all of that kind of stuff too.
Sure. From your experience, so what kind of time frame are they looking at usually from those implementation projects?
So, I mean, usually it's at least a 6 month to a year long project.
Sure.
It really kind of depends on the nature of the project, whether it's something where they're taking an existing site and they're just trying to bring it over to Kentico, or if it might already be something that, if they're already using Kentico, they're just looking to do a refresh. Obviously, there's implications with all of that as far as how the time works. But I mean, generally, from the very beginning phases, you're probably talking about a year, and you're getting into planning and kind of working with Kentico and explaining to them what your needs are, making sure that it's going to work as a platform, and then from there planning out the actual project before you begin. And then from the implementation standpoint, like I said, it's usually 6 months to a year, depending on what you're trying to do there, even potentially.
Right. And you mentioned it too, this is a .NET and Windows environment tool, and I know that is kind of a niche in itself. That seems to be one of those niches. Coming from Ohio, for whatever reason, Cleveland and Ohio seems to have a lot of .NET projects and companies that it uses. Do you see anybody that's on other platforms also using this, or is it generally because the IT team and the dev teams are super familiar with .NET that this kind of ties into their other systems?
I feel like it's kind of a mixed bag. I feel like a lot of clients end up using Kentico for a certain portion of their business, but then they may end up kind of bolting on other systems. So I've seen a lot of implementations where Kentico is what they use for the front end facing website for the customer, and then they'll have like an ERP bolted onto it where they can handle if they do any kind of e-commerce stuff and getting customer information, product information, whatever, from a third party system into Kentico. But yeah, I mean, you're right. It is a very kind of niche product as far as if someone's already in the Microsoft ecosphere, then it's kind of a logical jump to look at what your options are. And a lot of times it becomes an option between Kentico and Sitecore. And so at that point, it's just a matter of cost wise and your dev team and all of that as far as, what makes the most sense.
Right. What have you seen? I know there's a lot of CMSs, what they, one of the things they pride themselves on is their integrations with other tools. What about with Kentico? Or do you have easy integrations with CRMs and with ERPs or APIs? And, is it easy to do, or is that something that you kind of have to develop on the fly?
So, I feel like it's, again, kind of a mixed bag. I mean, they do have an integration out of box with Salesforce. So that, and then there are definitely some third-party systems that they have had integrations done with, done before with, even with some of the other Kentico partners that have done implementations. And so a lot of times, if it's something that's been done by someone, when you're talking with Kentico, they may recommend a particular partner that would make sense based on having done those integrations before. I've done a couple of integrations with, third-party software, different payment gateways for e-commerce, that kind of a thing. Hasn't been super difficult, but it is something that you need a developer for, and it's something that is kind of a manual process to go through. But there are definitely some integrations that have been done.
Sure. What about from a design standpoint? I know that one of the things that people has made WordPress and some of the other CMSs more accessible to a broader base is kind of the pre-developed themes and look and feel that you can kind of plug into a site. Does Kentico have that type of environment or, store that people can leverage, or is it going to be out of the box or have to customize it?
Yeah, it's fully a fully custom solution as far as the front end look and feel of the site. So I mean, they have I don't even think that there's a templating engine that they provide at all as far as that goes. It's really kind of whatever you want it to be. But again, I think that's offered just as, full flexibility as far as you can really, whatever you can dream up, you can make. It's just a matter of figuring it out. And you could use all kinds of different frameworks and technologies and platforms as far as bringing stuff in. So if you're using like preprocessors for your CSS and different JavaScript frameworks, all that kind of stuff, it gives you full flexibility to choose what works best for you.
Okay. So almost more like a headless solution to some extent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's good to know. So from the variety of clients that you've worked with, what would you say are people that probably shouldn't have gone with this product that went with it and maybe regretted it later?
So I think the big thing is going to just be the overall cost. I mean, the license itself, there's a cost associated with that, and there's yearly maintenance that you have to look at. And so I don't necessarily think that it is a bad solution for anyone because of the amount of flexibility that it has, but it definitely can be overkill for certain people as far as all the functionality that's packed into the product. So I really think the only time where it's kind of like a questionable thing is if you have a small mom and pop type situation. I just feel like it would be cost prohibitive for them to look at it. But other than that, I have seen small clients that have used it for kind of, brochure and very niche sites. And then obviously all the way up to enterprise level where they're using it for, expecting thousands of people to be visiting the sites daily and all of that. So,
and have thousands and thousands of pages of content and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yep. What about that content management kind of functionality in the system? Is it robust? I mean, how is that managed on the back end to allow teams to manage like different sections of a site or that kind of thing?
So, I mean, it has all of the features you would ever, imagine as far as a content management system goes. So the ability to create custom workflows and kind of go through that whole process, and the ability to set when things publish and how long they're published for. And so when they unpublish, all of that kind of stuff. And so, and then also, you can set up multiple different environments with Kentico and be able to move content over from one environment to the next. So you can have your staging environment where you have content staging on it and then move it to production when it's ready to go. And it can go through the workflows at that point and send emails to certain people to approve it and whatever you need to do. So it's definitely a robust option. And then from there, like I said, when you have a developer there that's able to kind of go through and customize it how you need to, the possibilities are endless as far as whatever you would need to do.
Right. So plan on having a decent budget, plan on having a either relatively knowledgeable internal dev team and or an agency on retainer to help you manage and maintain it over the course of the year. So, which is not dissimilar from larger e-commerce systems or larger enterprise, CMSs of like you mentioned, Sitecore and some of the other larger ones that you run into.
Yeah, the nice thing is they recently have kind of moved along to in older versions of Kentico they had what was called Portal Engine, and there was a lot of pre-built components and it was nice in some regards because the components were already there, but a lot of times you ended up taking a component and having to customize it anyways. Mm-hmm. So they recently moved over to .NET Core and MVC versions, and so that actually is kind of nice in a couple of ways. First of all, they did away with a lot of the pre-built stuff, which you would think would be a bad thing, but now you have again full control over. You have a dev team that can build out your very simple components that are very reusable. They call them widgets in Kentico, and so you can build out all these widgets that do whatever you need it to do, as custom as you need it to be. And then the nice thing is that you can find a .NET Core developer, which is a lot more readily available than someone who is intimately aware of what Portal Engine is and what goes into it and the customizations that are involved. So you can hire someone who's a .NET Core developer or an MVC developer, and they'll at least be able to kind of jump right in and work on the project without necessarily having any of that intimate knowledge of Kentico, and kind of learn as they go with how the API works for Kentico and be able to customize it.
Right. Now, from a hosting perspective, this is a self-hosted tool, right? It doesn't exist in the cloud or as a black box, or am I wrong there?
Actually, no. So they have a self-hosted version that you can purchase, but there's also a hosted version, the subscription plan that you can get through Kentico directly. And then if you do the self-hosted version, you can also put it on the cloud, on Azure, on AWS, whatever makes the most sense.
Right. But you're having to manage that server backend. Right. Yeah. It's not black box.
Right.
Yeah. So talk to me, like I said, mentioned earlier, one of the things that, obviously WordPress and some of the other platforms are susceptible to is hacking and DNS attacks and stuff like that. What does Kentico offer from a security standpoint?
Well, I mean, as far as keeping up to date, the fact that they're frequently releasing hot fixes, you can always rest assured that they have the latest and greatest and most up-to-date of everything. I recently was working with a client that was having issues with some of their forms where they were getting a lot of spam. And one of the newer hot fixes that they just released included the latest version of Google CAPTCHA, which actually was able to fix the issue that they were having. So, I mean, it's definitely nice in that regard. And then all of the functionality that's offered through Azure, I mean, they have anything you could ever expect as far as security is concerned and being able to lock down your application as needed. I mean, there's integrations with Active Directory through Azure. So, I mean, you can have single sign-on where somebody is signing on and using their same Microsoft credentials, and it will also work in Kentico.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, it's super robust as far as that's concerned as well.
So if you had to compare this, like obviously Sitecore's in kind of a similar space, what other content management systems are kind of in this realm from your perspective?
So it seems like, I mean, there were a couple that I feel like that were fairly relevant a few years back that, may or may not even be around anymore. So like Episerver was one of them. Sitefinity was another one. I feel like now, though, Kentico is kind of going up against Sitecore. Sitecore is still a little bit more, higher. The cost is definitely a lot higher than Kentico is. But sure. As far as the functionality and, the amount of knowledge that a dev needs as far as getting into a project and stuff like that, I feel like it's a little bit more similar.
Sure. If you had a wish list of things that Kentico is not doing today that would make your life and the companies you work with a lot easier, what are some of the things that you'd like to see it develop?
So I think as an overarching, I mean, their documentation is kind of hands down one of the better sets of documentation that I've seen, surprisingly. And I just think that there can be a little bit more as far as just overall training goes. I think that's something that I have kind of taken on as a consultant, where I like to work with the end users and kind of train them in their own systems. And I think there's definitely some room for improvement there as far as the trainings that they offer to their end clients. I mean, as far as features and functionality goes, it really kind of has everything you would ever need. It's there's a clear, defined roadmap as far as where they're trying to go with things. So I'm interested to see what they come up with as far as new features that are available, just because there's already so much packed into there.
Right. And just to give people a sense, I mean, obviously you don't work for Kentico, you're not involved with the licensing and stuff. Can you give people a sense of what the typical cost is? I mean, I don't know how they base their pricing. I know like some base it on like, hits and CP usage and CPU usage and stuff like that. I know that in some packages you can just get an outright license for it. But I don't know what does that look like now?
So they had a perpetual license model previously where you could just buy a license outright. I think they recently switched over to a subscription-based model. So I'm not super familiar with how the subscription model works exactly, but I think if you were still looking at assuming that they still offer the perpetual license, I want to say it starts around $10,000 for the license. And then there's yearly maintenance contracts as far as keeping up to date and being able to get the newer hot fixes as they come out and stuff like that. So there's definitely costs associated with that part of it as well. And then you're still looking at, figuring out hosting and then any kind of dev needs that you would need. So, I mean, I would venture to guess that on a small end, a project would still probably run you about $50,000, and then on up, depending on what you were trying to accomplish.
Right. And now, if they come out with a new version, you still would have to upgrade to that version and then pay, right? Again, or is it?
So, like I said, with the new subscription model, I'm pretty sure that it includes obviously any newer versions that come out, and so they'll just include the hot fixes, and so you'll be able to just update it as needed. And
sure,
that's mostly if you had like an on-prem and you were hosting it yourself, you'd have to go through the process of upgrading it. If it's the version where Kentico is actually hosting it, they're going to apply those hot fixes, as needed on the server side, and so you don't necessarily have to worry about it as much.
Right. Now, I know one of the first questions we get from a lot of our clients is they're like, "But what about the SEO?" And with a lot of the out of the box kind of free packages, they have plugins and tools and all that kind of stuff you can add. I would imagine for something like this, though, it's a hands-on kind of manual approach, right? You need to get your devs involved. You need to make sure that things are coded correctly from the get-go.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that is part of it. Is kind of identifying that early on when you're creating the widgets and writing the code and making sure that you're accounting for all of that. There is, definitely functionality built into Kentico as far as SEO is concerned. So, I mean, things like being able to add your Google Analytics tracking codes and even some of the site title and the keywords and all of that. There's fields for that are built in, and you can expose those and access those fairly easily in the code. So, I mean, it's definitely still SEO friendly and aware of what's out there. But it's also something where when you're building out the project and looking at setting up the widgets and all of that, you want to make sure that the code that's written is written in an SEO friendly way as well.
Sure. What are your tips for people that are thinking about starting a project like this? And, where are some of the things that maybe companies aren't preparing enough for it or planning enough that you kind of walk into and you're like, boy, this is a mess. Like, is there stuff that they should prepare for a big enterprise tool like this?
I think one of the big things that I've seen a lot recently is accessibility. So, I mean, there's definitely some functionality built in, again, as far as, being accessible. But I think I see a lot of projects where that's the one thing that's kind of overlooked. I mean, SEO is definitely important from a marketing standpoint and everything, but you don't necessarily always think about people that have disabilities using your site. And so I think that's definitely something to be cognizant of when you're building things out.
Yeah, no, that's hugely important. We actually have a study that we did on our website for the multifamily industry where we looked at about 500 plus websites and did a scan of just the homepage. And it was over 99% of the sites had something that could potentially put them at risk for a lawsuit.
It's becoming super common to have those lawsuits that just pop up as soon as sites launch that they're looking for them. So
yeah, especially for companies that are enterprise size, they know they have a big budget and they know that if they get a letter, they're probably going to settle, and they're it's a rather sizable expense. And not only the risk of lawsuits, but you want your site to be as accessible to as many people as possible, and following some of those best practices are obviously going to make it usable by a lot more people.
Yeah, it's I didn't realize until I recently went through an audit, and it is super frustrating to try to navigate through a site if you're using a keyboard or a screen reader or something like that. You don't think about those because you never have to readily do that, but put yourself into that place, and it is actually really irritating to try to make your way through certain sites and whatever, and you can't even navigate through. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point. And if you're a larger company, it definitely puts you at risk. I mean, there's a lot of the SEO best practices are actually usability best practices too, but it doesn't cover everything. And there's obviously the whole being able to tab index through things and use forms and all that kind of stuff is extremely important. What else do you think that, so accessibility, is there stuff that you continually see people just not be prepared for when they're starting a project like this?
I mean, as you're looking through and planning for the project, a lot of times there's API integrations, and I feel like, you can plan as much as you want for it, but until you actually are getting into it, it kind of comes back to bite you. And so, as much as you can do as far as pre-planning for that and understanding what your integration points are going to be and how things are going to function, and starting the process of contacting those third parties that you're going to be doing the API integrations with, all that. Yeah, I feel like that's a huge concern.
And then discovering that they charge for those API integrations, yes. And it can be pretty sizable too. Yeah, we've run into that a number of times where people are like, "Well, you just plug in their data," and it's like, yeah, and they're going to charge you for it. That's yeah. All right. Well, any other tips and tricks that you could think of for people that are looking at Kentico or other content management systems, words of wisdom that you would have for them?
I mean, I feel like the big thing is if you're considering Kentico, definitely reach out to them. They are a great organization. They're super happy to get on a phone call with you, discuss the product. I mean, you can definitely call me and I'm, happy to as well, but they know the ins and outs of everything about their product and can talk through it and understand how it's going to work with your project and, what the cost would be and all the implications with it. So don't hesitate to reach out to them, and, they'll do whatever they can to understand what works best for you.
Sure. And for everybody watching and or listening, we will make sure that Mike's contact information is in the description. So if you want to reach out to him, and if you're thinking about Kentico or kind of comparing content management systems, he's done a lot of work in that area, has a lot of experience, so he can help you in that journey. And I can say firsthand, Mike is very pleasant to work with. We've worked with Mike for a number of years now on other projects using Kentico, that he's made it less painful than they would be without. Mike, thanks for joining us today. I really appreciate it. Like I said, we will have your contact information in our notes and descriptions. And good luck with your upcoming projects. And hopefully we'll talk to you again soon as more things happen in the content management world. And I always love to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right, great. Thank you.
See you later.